Success does not begin in the world you can see. It begins in the world you carry inside you. Long before achievement takes shape, before recognition arrives, before money, influence, or power ever appear, success is decided internally. Most people spend their lives chasing external results, never realizing that the real work must happen within first. They search for opportunity, luck, timing, or permission, unaware that the greatest obstacle and the greatest advantage has always been their own mind. The truth is uncomfortable, but it is freeing. Nothing outside of you changes until something inside of you does. Your environment is not your enemy. Your circumstances are not your prison. The real battle is internal, between doubt and belief, fear and courage, comfort and growth. And the outcome of that battle determines everything that follows. Every successful life is the result of a person who learned how to master their inner world before attempting to control the outer one. Most people are reactive. They let life decide how they feel, what they think, and how they act. When things go well, they feel confident. When things go wrong, they collapse. Their mindset rises and falls with circumstances, which means their progress is unstable. But those who master success understand something different. Control begins with self-mastery. They don't wait for motivation. They don't wait for confidence. They create both by choosing discipline over emotion and intention over impulse. Inside every person exists two voices. One whispers comfort, excuses, and fear. The other calls for growth, courage, and responsibility. Most people listen to the louder voice, not the wiser one. And the louder voice is almost always fear disguised as logic. It tells you to wait, to play small, to avoid risk, to stay where it's safe. But mastery begins the moment you stop obeying that voice and start training your mind to respond instead of react. Success requires clarity, not vague hope, not wishful thinking, but a clear understanding of who you want to become and why that version of you matters. When your purpose is unclear, your actions become scattered. When your direction is weak, your discipline collapses. But when you know exactly what you're building toward, your mind begins to organize itself around that vision. Decisions become simpler. Distractions lose their power. You stop chasing everything and start committing to something. The mind is either trained or it is uncontrolled. There is no neutral state. If you don't program it intentionally, it will absorb fear, limitation, and doubt from the world around you. And slowly, quietly, those thoughts will shape your identity. You will begin to act in ways that confirm your limitations rather than challenge them. You will mistake familiarity for safety and comfort for peace. And without realizing it, you will settle into a life far smaller than what you are capable of living. But mastery changes this. Mastery begins when you recognize that thoughts are tools, not truths. Just because a thought appears in your mind does not mean it deserves your attention. You can question it, redirect it, replace it. The moment you learn to interrupt negative thinking patterns, you reclaim authority over your future. You stop being a passenger in your own life and become the driver. Those who succeed are not free from fear. They simply refuse to let fear decide their actions. They feel doubt and move anyway. They feel uncertainty and stay committed. They feel resistance and push through it. This is not talent. This is training. This is mental conditioning developed through repetition, discipline, and conscious effort. Over time, the mind adapts. What once felt difficult becomes normal. What once felt impossible becomes expected. Mastering success means mastering consistency, not intensity, not perfection, consistency. Showing up even when progress feels slow. Choosing growth even when comfort is available. staying loyal to your long-term vision even when short-term results are invisible. The mind learns through repetition, and every small act of discipline strengthens your internal foundation. This is how confidence is built, not through talk, but through proof. Proof created by keeping promises to yourself. Once you understand that success is built internally, the next realization becomes unavoidable. Your beliefs are quietly shaping every result in your life. Not the beliefs you talk about, but the ones you act from. The ones that influence how you respond under pressure, how long you persist when things get difficult, and how you interpret failure. These beliefs operate beneath the surface, guiding your behavior even when you are unaware of them. And until you bring them into the light, they will continue to dictate the ceiling of your potential. Most people inherit their beliefs without questioning them. They absorb limitations from their environment, their upbringing, their past experiences, and the opinions of others. Over time, these borrowed beliefs become internal rules. Rules about what is possible, what is realistic, and what someone like them is allowed to achieve. These rules feel natural, but they are not truth. They are conditioning. And conditioning can be rewritten. Belief is not about blind optimism. It is about expectations shaped by repetition. You believe what you repeatedly see yourself do. This is why confidence grows through action, not affirmations alone. Each time you show up despite resistance, your mind records evidence that you are capable. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen trust in your own ability to follow through. Slowly, your internal narrative shifts. The voice of doubt weakens. The voice of certainty becomes steadier. Failure plays a critical role in this process. Most people interpret failure as proof that they are not good enough. Those who master success interpret failure as feedback. The event itself is neutral. It is the meaning you assign to it that determines whether it weakens you or strengthens you. When failure is viewed as information, it loses its power to define you. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What can I learn from this?" That shift transforms setbacks into stepping stones. As your beliefs evolve, so does your behavior. You begin taking actions that once felt uncomfortable. You raise your standards. You stop tolerating patterns that keep you stagnant. You become more selective about how you spend your time, who you listen to, and what you allow to influence your thinking. This is not arrogance, it is clarity. You understand that every input shapes your mindset, and your mindset shapes your future. One of the most important internal shifts is learning to detach your identity from your current results. Your present circumstances are not a verdict on your worth or your ability. They are a snapshot of where you are in the process. When you confuse your current position with your identity, you limit growth. But when you see yourself as someone in development, pressure turns into fuel instead of fear. Mastery requires patience with the process and firmness with yourself. Growth is rarely dramatic in the moment. It happens gradually, through consistent effort and small improvements that compound over time. Those who succeed are not rushing, they are building. They understand that rushing leads to burnout, but steady commitment leads to transformation. At this stage, something powerful begins to happen. You stop waiting for permission. You stop seeking validation. You stop comparing your journey to others. Your focus turns inward, not in self-absorption, but in self-leadership. You begin measuring progress by alignment rather than applause. And that internal alignment becomes your anchor when external results are slow to appear. This is the moment when success stops feeling distant and starts feeling inevitable. Not because everything is easy, but because you trust yourself to handle what comes next. You know you can adjust, learn, and persist. That trust changes how you move through the world. Your decisions become calmer. your actions become more deliberate. Your energy becomes grounded. The world you see around you is not random. It is not accidental. It is not unfair by default. It is, more often than people are willing to admit, a mirror, a reflection of what has been allowed to live inside the mind for years. Long before success becomes visible, it is rehearsed quietly in thought. Long before failure shows up in results, it settles comfortably in beliefs. This is why two people can stand in the same situation, face the same pressure, and walk away with completely different lives. Most people try to change outcomes without ever changing the inner conversation that creates them. They work harder but think smaller. They move faster but doubt deeper. They chase opportunities while carrying the same mental limits that blocked them before. And then they wonder why progress feels heavy, slow, and exhausting. The truth is simple, but not easy to accept. Effort without alignment drains you. Action without belief burns you out. The mind is always listening. Every thought you repeat becomes a quiet instruction. Every belief you hold becomes a boundary. When you tell yourself you are behind, the mind searches for proof. When you tell yourself success is for others, the mind obeys by shrinking your vision. When you say this is just how life is, the mind stops looking for doors. It doesn't argue. It executes. But the same system that limits you can liberate you. The same internal voice that weakens you can be trained to strengthen you. This is where real mastery begins. Not with motivation, but with mental discipline. Not with hype, but with intention. You don't need to control every thought, but you must control which ones you allow to stay. High achievers don't wait for confidence to arrive before they move. Confidence is not a gift. It is built through repetition of aligned thought and action. They choose thoughts that support movement, not comfort. They speak to themselves with authority, not apology. Even in uncertainty, they decide who they are becoming. That decision shapes their behavior long before results show up. Think about it. Every meaningful achievement in history began as an internal agreement. Someone decided, quietly and firmly, that their current circumstances would not define their future. They held that decision when evidence was missing. They protected it when doubt attacked. They repeated it when progress felt invisible. And slowly, reality began to adjust. This is not magic. It is mental cause and effect. Thoughts influence emotion. Emotion influences action. Action compounds into habit. Habit creates identity. Identity shapes destiny. Break the chain at the level of thought, and everything downstream changes. Yet most people never challenge the beliefs they inherited. They live on borrowed limits. They accept definitions of success written by fear, society, or past failure. They let old moments speak louder than future potential. And so their inner world stays crowded with noise, contradiction, and hesitation. Mastery requires silence. Not the absence of noise, but the absence of confusion. It requires deciding what you stand for internally, before the world demands answers. When your inner voice is clear, external chaos loses power. Pressure becomes fuel. Criticism becomes irrelevant. Delay becomes temporary. This is why success is an inside job. Not because the outside doesn't matter, but because it responds. The outer world follows inner leadership. When the mind is trained, focused, and intentional, it stops reacting and starts directing. And that is when effort begins to feel purposeful instead of painful. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your inner standards. Change those standards, and everything else eventually follows. Quietly, gradually, clarity is the force that separates movement from momentum. Many people stay busy their entire lives and still feel stuck because activity without direction only creates noise. When the mind lacks a clear image of where it is going, energy leaks into hesitation, distraction, and constant second-guessing. The body may be moving, but the spirit is drifting. True progress begins the moment confusion is replaced with intention. Most uncertainty does not come from lack of options. It comes from lack of decision. The mind hates a vacuum, and when direction is missing, it fills the space with fear. That fear then disguises itself as overthinking, perfectionism, and waiting for the right time. In reality, what people are waiting for is permission to believe in their own direction. But permission never arrives. It must be claimed. Vision is not about seeing the future in detail. It is about choosing a direction and committing to it long enough for reality to respond. The mind works best when it has a target. Not a wish, not a vague hope, but a clear internal command. When direction becomes firm, distractions lose their pull. Doubt grows quieter. Action becomes simpler. The path doesn't magically become easy, but it becomes clear. This clarity begins with honesty. You cannot move forward while pretending you want something you don't. Many people chase goals that impress others but leave them empty. They confuse attention with purpose and applause with fulfillment. And so, even when they achieve something, it feels hollow. Real clarity aligns desire with values. It asks not just what you want, but why it matters to you. When the why is weak, discipline collapses under pressure. But when purpose is rooted deeply, effort feels meaningful, even when progress is slow. Purpose stabilizes the mind when results are delayed. It reminds you that the journey itself is shaping who you are becoming, and that identity is more powerful than any short-term outcome. Once clarity is established, discipline becomes less about force and more about loyalty. Loyalty to the vision you chose when doubt was quiet. Loyalty to the standard you set when motivation was high. Discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect in action. It is the decision to honor your future self over your present comfort. This is where most people fail. Not because they lack ability, but because they break trust with themselves. They promise change and abandon it at the first sign of resistance. Over time, the mind learns not to take them seriously. Confidence erodes. Momentum fades. But when you keep small promises consistently, something powerful happens. Self-trust is rebuilt. And with self-trust comes calm strength. Clarity also teaches you what to say no to. Growth requires subtraction. You cannot build a focused life while feeding every distraction. Every yes is a trade. Time, energy, and attention are always being spent, whether consciously or not. Those who master success learn to invest these resources with intention, not emotion. The clearer the vision, the easier it becomes to endure temporary discomfort. Sacrifice stops feeling like loss and starts feeling like strategy. Late nights, early mornings, lonely stretches, these no longer feel random. They become meaningful steps toward something chosen, not forced, and as clarity deepens, action accelerates. Decisions that once felt heavy become automatic. You stop negotiating with yourself. You move, not because you are certain of the outcome, but because you are certain of who you are becoming. That certainty is what carries you forward when motivation fades. Inside this clarity, a quiet confidence forms, not loud, not arrogant, just steady. A confidence that does not need validation, because it is rooted in alignment. And when alignment exists between thought, intention, and action, progress becomes inevitable. Discipline is often misunderstood because it is rarely explained from the inside out. People see it as restriction, as pressure, as something imposed from the outside. But real discipline is internal alignment. It is the natural outcome of deciding who you are and refusing to betray that decision. When identity becomes clear, discipline stops being a battle and becomes a standard. Most people wait for motivation to act. But motivation is unreliable because it is emotional. Emotions change with circumstances. Discipline, however, is anchored in values. It does not rise and fall with mood. It operates quietly, consistently, even when nothing feels inspiring. This is why disciplined individuals appear unstoppable, not because they feel stronger, but because they have removed negotiation from their daily actions. Every day, the mind presents options: comfort or growth, delay or progress, excuses or ownership. Discipline is the habit of choosing growth so often that it becomes automatic. Over time, these choices compound. Small acts of discipline may seem insignificant in the moment, but they accumulate into character, and character determines destiny long before results are visible. The greatest danger is not failure. It is inconsistent. Starting and stopping fractures momentum and weakens self-trust. Each time you abandon a commitment, you teach your mind that discomfort is a valid reason to quit. But each time you follow through, even imperfectly, you send a different message: that you are reliable, that you finish what you start, that resistance does not control you. Discipline also creates emotional stability. When your actions are guided by principle rather than impulse, chaos loses its grip. You stop reacting and start responding. You move with intention instead of urgency. This stability becomes a form of power, because it allows you to think clearly while others are overwhelmed. There will be days when effort feels heavy and progress feels invisible. Discipline carries you through these seasons. It does not demand enthusiasm. It only demands obedience to your chosen path. And paradoxically, it is through this obedience that freedom is built. Freedom from doubt. Freedom from regret. Freedom from the constant anxiety of knowing you could be more but choosing less. As discipline strengthens, desire becomes refined. You stop craving distractions that once consumed you. The satisfaction of progress replaces the need for escape. Your standards rise. What once felt difficult becomes normal. What once felt impossible becomes expected. This is not because life becomes easier, but because you become stronger. Discipline is also deeply connected to self-respect. You cannot disrespect your own word and expect confidence to survive. Confidence is built through evidence. Each disciplined action is proof that you can trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, fear loses authority. You no longer hesitate as much. You no longer seek approval. You move forward with quiet certainty. Over time, discipline reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to change and start seeing yourself as someone who lives by principle. This shift is subtle but transformative. It changes how you walk into rooms, how you speak, how you handle setbacks. You become less reactive, more grounded, more resilient. This internal shift is what most people are truly searching for. Not success as an outcome, but strength as a state of being. Discipline builds that strength slowly, invisibly, but permanently. It does not promise comfort, it promises capacity. Resilience is not loud. It does not announce itself or demand recognition. It works in silence, behind closed doors, in moments where quitting feels reasonable and continuing feels heavy. Most people think resilience is about enduring hardship. But its real power is in how quickly you recover your focus after being shaken. Life will test you. That is not a possibility. It is a guarantee. What determines your trajectory is not the test, but your response. Setbacks are not signs of misalignment. They are signs of movement. Resistance only appears when momentum exists. If you are being challenged, it means you are no longer standing still. Resilient minds understand this and refuse to personalize obstacles. They see difficulty as information, not condemnation. Each obstacle carries feedback, and those who listen grow stronger, while others grow bitter. Adaptability is resilience in motion. It is the willingness to adjust strategy without abandoning purpose. Too many people cling to methods instead of vision. When a path collapses, they interpret it as failure rather than redirection. But progress does not demand rigidity. It demands responsiveness. The ability to shift without losing identity is one of the most valuable skills a person can develop. Every era rewards those who evolve. The world changes faster than comfort can keep up with. Old systems break. Familiar routines lose relevance. Those who refuse to adapt are not punished, they are simply left behind. Adaptability is not about chasing trends. It is about staying aligned with truth, while remaining flexible in execution. Mental endurance is built through repeated exposure to uncertainty. Confidence does not come from certainty. It comes from navigating doubt and surviving it. Each time you face the unknown and keep moving, your nervous system learns that discomfort is survivable. Fear loses its grip, not because it disappears, but because it is no longer believed. There will be moments when effort produces no visible reward. These moments are dangerous, not because they are painful, but because they tempt abandonment. This is where resilience is forged. Staying present when results are delayed builds a depth of strength that shortcuts never provide. What you endure in silence becomes the foundation of future authority. Resilient individuals also learn how to release what no longer serves them. Holding on to outdated identities, failed strategies, or misplaced expectations drains energy. Letting go is not weakness, it is wisdom. Adaptability requires humility, the ability to admit that growth demands change. What brought you here may not take you further. The strongest minds are not those who avoid breakdowns, but those who use them as breakthroughs. Moments of collapse strip away illusion. They reveal what is essential and what was never necessary. From this clarity, a more grounded version of self emerges. One less dependent on external validation and more anchored in inner direction. Resilience also deepens gratitude. When you have faced loss, progress feels sacred. When you have endured uncertainty, stability becomes meaningful. Gratitude is not passive appreciation, it is active recognition of growth. It reinforces resilience by reminding you of how far you have already traveled. With time, resilience becomes instinctive. You stop panicking at disruption. You stop overreacting to temporary setbacks. You learn to conserve energy, to move deliberately, to trust your capacity to adapt. This steadiness becomes magnetic. Others feel it. Opportunities respond to it. Adaptability and resilience together create durability. Not fleeting success, but sustained momentum. The kind that survives seasons of silence, resistance, and reinvention. This durability is what separates temporary achievers from those who build lasting impact. By now, something has shifted. You are no longer chasing outcomes with desperation. You are building inner strength with intention. And this asterisk strength changes everything. It changes how you see obstacles, how you handle uncertainty, how you trust yourself when the path forward is unclear.